Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with the Democratic women of East Alabama. It is such an honor. Please let me know if you can hear me. If I need to speak louder, please let me know.
Speak louder.
Speak louder, and maybe I'll just come up here. Test. Probably doesn't work.
I don't know how to cut it out.
I'm going to have to work on my voice, obviously. So.
Yeah, I'll have to get somebody to put
Okay, I think I can make it work. Just let me know if you can hear me now. It is such an honor, and as Pam was saying before, this early stage in the process is really about us just getting to know you. So I like to say I'm on a listening tour, not a speaking tour. When I started this campaign, I said, I want to be a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all. So I want to keep my remarks fairly brief, tell you a little bit about me, and then really spend some time getting to know all of you. So there's one table I didn't make it to, so I'm coming. I'm going to be over there in a bit, but I really want to spend more time hearing from you what the issues are. As I travel the state, I do my research, but it really is so important to hear from you. So does that sound good? Okay. So we're going to start with the hard part, and that is my name. The first name is Dakarai. Dakarai rhymes with safari. We're just talking about safari in Africa. The last name is Larriett. So you might have seen that on some of the fans. So basically it's like safari and then Larriett. Dakarai Larriett. Got it? All right. Can you guys try it? Dakarai. Perfect. All right. So basically born and raised Birmingham, Alabama. You basically told my whole story, so I don't have much.
That's my job.
Yeah, thank you. My dad was in the Army, and his work took us around the world. And it was such an honor, and it taught me a lot about service. So we lived in California, Oklahoma, Washington State, and Germany before third grade. That's a lot of moving. But it developed my empathy, my love for diversity and inclusion, and we just got to benefit from the best of America. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. My mom was a teacher, so education was always very important in the household, and she always advocated for my sister and me to go to the best schools anywhere we lived. In fact, and sometimes she would also teach us at home. So it was very important in our household. We came back to Alabama, and I went to school here. My mom realized that our local Alabama, Central City, Birmingham schools were not the best. And from there, I went to magnet schools. And I know the school choice and the specifics of it are a hot topic. I'd love to get into that later. But if it were not for school choice, I wouldn't be standing here today. So I went to W.J. Christian, a magnet school for gifted youth.
You went to William J. Christian?
I did.
That was my school.
Oh, well, what years were you there?
When was I there?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know.
Before you said the video, just put it together, got it. Before, okay. From W.J. Christian, I went to Auburn School of Fine Arts, so one of our really Tony charter schools in the state that I'm so proud of. And that set me up to go to University of Alabama. But when I graduated from Alabama, there was a problem. There were no jobs for me in the state in my field. So I went to school for business, specifically wanted to work in apparel, applied at Saks, didn't get that job, but where else would I work? So I ended up in New York and built my career there, started businesses, started my pet care business, bought my first home, all those things I wish that I could have done right here in Alabama. And it's so sad when I think about it. We invest so much in our youth, and then they leave. Where do they go? They go to Atlanta, they go to New York. Lisa Ward, I'm sure a lot of you know Lisa, was speaking about the same thing. She surveyed some University of Alabama students. Out of 24, 4 are staying in the state. Think about that. That's our institution. We educated those folks. All that talent is leaving the state. So again, education is a big, big piece of this campaign, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. When I was in New York, I was in business, but something was missing from my life. I wanted to be more involved in the community. I didn't want to think dollars and cents every day. I earned my MBA, but I knew there was something missing. And a friend invited me to join a board called the Bronx Community Pride Center. It was a community center for LGBT youth in the Bronx, South Bronx, one of the poorest congressional districts in the country. And I threw myself into that work, taking care of homeless youth, youth who would have been in trouble otherwise if they didn't have a place to go after school. From there, I was recruited to join the board of the National Harm Reduction Coalition. This is a national organization that helps communities and individuals impacted by drug use. So we did a lot of work around the opioid epidemic, ensuring that we had overdose kits available throughout the country, and helping communities understand what the issue was, and that's a sickness. This really just built in me a love for serving the community and the underserved. Now, like many people, during COVID, it presented an opportunity to work remote, and I took that opportunity to move back to Alabama. And again, threw myself into the community, got very involved with Center City, Birmingham, became a Meals on Wheels driver, serving our senior citizens. I, of course, started a pet care company, so I take care of our unhoused animals with the Greater Humane Society, and quickly became the president of my community HOA. So with that work, I've really learned how things happen in Birmingham. I've worked with the City Council President O'Quinn on issues regarding the construction of the building and the safety issues impacting the community. I've advocated to the mayor's office. It really has been a micro lesson in civics. About 3 weeks before I was due to move 100% to Alabama, because I was commuting back and forth to Michigan for some work there for a company called Whirlpool, I was falsely arrested. I was falsely arrested.
Thank you. Okay.
And that experience is my political why. I know there's so many other issues that are important, and we're going to talk about those, but for me, that was the lightning rod moment. So I was 3 weeks away. I was going to be 100% here in Alabama, selling my home in Michigan, and falsely arrested for driving under the influence of drugs. I was thrown into jail. My driver's license was confiscated for 2.5 months, and my life was ruined. I was humiliated. 5 months after that incident, we reviewed the body and dash cam video with my attorney and saw that the troopers attempted to plant drugs in my car. So not only did they want to ruin me that night, they wanted to ruin me completely. And I advocated up to the governor's office, Gretchen Whitmer. I obviously advocated locally to my mayor. I literally tried to file a police report against the police, and nothing has been done for over a year. And what I realized is that even someone like myself with resources, with political connections, to meet with the mayor or the governor's office 3 times, people are suffering. The justice system is not fair, and it's not taking care of everyone. We're not seeing equal justice under the law. And that was really the birth of this campaign. As I started speaking to other people, I heard that these occurrences happen all the time. We are, for example, right here in Alabama, faced with HB 202, the expansion of qualified immunity. It's going to be open season for people who look like me. Now, as I said before, this campaign is about listening. So I've been listening for the last 4 months, speaking to Alabamians up and down the state. The issues that I hear that are most pressing, that keep people up at night, are really around education, economic opportunity, and healthcare. And I see these issues as being so interconnected. And I even throw public safety, in my experience, under healthcare, right? You can't have certain parts of the population living in duress and afraid to drive. It really is all very related. And I spoke a little bit about my experience with education. It's an investment. It's a 20-year investment. What I really want to do with this campaign is help people understand the importance of making that investment now so that we can attract the right businesses that will pay their fair share into our tax base and lift up the entire state. And of course, we can't enjoy any of these things if we're sick and straddle with debt, medical debt. So it's so interrelated. And obviously, it's not lost on your group here. Reproductive freedom, that is part of health. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about the details and build those out. What you're going to see on our website, though, is very succinct messaging. And we have our eye on the general election. We know that there's certain issues that are so important, but if we lean into them very heavily now, we'll have no chance in November. So we've got to be very succinct about the messaging, and it's really about creating a big tent. So you're also not going to see an individual whose name starts with T on our website. There are actually two that we could talk a lot about. And we're not going to talk about them because we don't want people to feel badly about their prior voting history. We want to bring everybody in with open arms into this tent. And we want to be solutions focused. So everything that you see coming out from our campaign is really going to be about the solutions and how we work together to improve the lives of all our Americans. So as I promised, I'm here to listen. So that's largely the spiel. In terms of getting involved, please take a look at our website and our social media. As we complete this listening tour over the next couple of months, we'll build out the detailed policy. But I'm here to listen and to hear from you. So please engage with us on social, on our website, and I would love to open it up to discussion now and answer any questions I can. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, do we have any questions?
Yes.
I just might as well jump right into this mess. In Alabama, there's a lot of stigma attached to convictions, drugs, law enforcement, and race. You've got them all pulled in one How are you addressing that with populations that are not going to be sympathetic to people on just about all
What's the
of them?
question, please? We can't hear
All right.
you. Sorry.
Okay. Alabama has a lot of people who have no sympathy for drugs. They have no sympathy for people who get in trouble with law enforcement. They have no sympathy for anybody who has been arrested or whatever. And they haven't got a whole lot of sympathy for people who aren't colored like us.
Yep, no, they don't.
Until their family member gets arrested.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Dakarai the whole package. Okay, so my question is, how do you reach out to try to bridge that gap? Because if you don't get some of their votes, you're not going to get elected.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. And you're right. It is a flashpoint issue. And I apologize. It really is a flashpoint issue, Jim. And what we're doing is talking about it. So one of the first things we did when we started this campaign is we said, what are our areas of exposure and liability? So everyone's heard of opposition research. Well, there's also a thing called self-research. And we know that while that was my why, and I think that it will certainly resonate with a Democratic base, we've got to think to November. So part of that is telling the story in our words, right now, a year and a half in advance. So literally last week, every single day, I had the opportunity to tell my story and my origin story. Today I'm going to be meeting with the Reflector. Tomorrow I'm meeting with AL.com. So we want to take the lead on the story. And then it's also about communicating in a way that's digestible. So we did workshop this, Jim. When you take it away from the race and you talk about your rights as a motorist, people get it. So one of our key legislative ideas that we'll build out over the next couple of months is what's called a Motorist Bill of Rights. So there's nothing about race. It's not called the George Floyd Bill. It's about our interactions with the police. So what's a legitimate reason to pull me over? It's very iffy, right? There has to be a legitimate reason. When you get pulled over, your sobriety test needs to be scientifically proven. Many of these tests are not scientific. They're really just evidence gathering for the police. And then finally, what happens to the evidence? So in my case, I had to fight for 5.5 months, a high-priced attorney, to get part of the evidence which was altered by the police. And I think the video we got is not the one they meant to send us because it's so criminal. So I want the evidence to go to victims, as in my case, I was a victim. Within 24 hours, free of cost. I had to spend about $600 getting my own video, partial video. So we're going to take the issue and create the solution around it and take it away from race. We all have rights as motorists here, and they need to be defined federally, because I was living in Alabama. I was packing up my second home in Michigan, so this can happen in Georgia, it can happen in Mississippi, right?
Medicaid.
Yes.
Talk about Medicaid expansion, because I know I called the governor's office almost a year ago when I thought our local hospital was done full, so we got a HUD loan that helped us out. And I'm at an age where I can't live an hour or two away from my closest heart attack hospital or stroke hospital. So the guy that I spoke to in the governor's office said it was a no-brainer to expand it. At that, of course, who knows what's going on now, but at that time, Alabama was eligible under one of the, I think it was the American Rescue Plan Act, to expand up to 7 years, 100% covered by the Fed. And UAB had done a study back when Mr. Obama was in office showing it would create over 30,000 jobs. And so when I called him, I didn't get a chance to say it. He said it's a no-brainer to expand it. But she's only one person, meaning she's not competent to go out there and lobby. And so if the legislature will pass it, well, one of our representatives knew all about it, but he's not going to step up. The other one said, I do what the Republicans tell me to do, because I gave money, and he's just a placeholder. That's all he is. He's just a placeholder. And I can't remember what the third one is. Anyway, so that's what I found out. And so right now, we still see in this state, money flows to Bob Riley, a former governor, anytime they pass a bill for some reason. But Medicaid needs to expand in this state. Instead, they're talking about cutting it again.
Yes.
And we've already lost Stringfellow, which was a hospital here until a few months ago. Jacksonville lost its hospital. It's now part of the nursing school. And in Wadowee, they lost their hospital. So we've got this thing in Pell City, which fortunate that came along. But they're killing us. They're killing us all. And as a psychologist, I work with many families who are on Medicaid where both parents worked. Sometimes both work 2 jobs and they're still on Medicaid because we're below the poverty level here. So that, I don't know what you can do to fix that. I'm just bringing it up.
Yeah, I hear you. This certainly falls under health, which is an investment in our people,
Right.
and our way of life. And just some of the numbers, I'm a numbers guy. I get my career in supply chain. 1 million Alabamians rely upon Medicaid. That's 20%, 1 out of 5 people. That's shocking. 750,000 rely upon SNAP, so 14%. So the reality is, we are a poor state, and we've got to make those investments to change that. In the meantime, when I think about bills like the Big Beautiful Bill, as it's very improperly named, the cost sharing requirements in that would bankrupt the state. So there's going to have to be a cut if that is passed in the way that it is being proposed right now and sitting with the Senate. What you would find in a candidate like myself, or as a sitting senator, someone who would fight for retaining and expanding those benefits. But the long-term strategy really is building a pipeline here in the state where we don't need them as much. So again, bringing that right business in that will pay their fair share and making the population healthy from the beginning. So that's the long-term strategy. But in the short term, I just don't see the math in increasing our cost share when we already don't have the funds to support the folks we have.
I have a question. Getting into what's states' rights and what's national rights, and sometimes Alabama can be a little behind the curve in trying to take care of the citizens. One of the things I know they're talking about now is minimum wage. So we're still at $7.25, which we've been at since 2009. And nationally, there's a movement now or a bill that's been filed to raise the national minimum wage to $15, which still is barely a livable amount. Well, even in Alabama, yeah, that's really tough. Do you think that should be a state's right or a national? Would you support that if you were in the Senate? Would you support taking it on a national level, or do you think that belongs in the state?
I think that the federal government has a role and responsibility in driving the discussion, but as someone who's lived in maybe highest price state and we're one of the lowest, I understand those numbers where we land are very different. So I'm going to kind of go somewhere in the middle, and that it needs to be pegged to cost of living. I think that's fair. I think that federally we can give some guidelines to ensure that everyone has a shot, right? Because that $7.25 is not far from what I was making in high school. So that's like in the 90s. It's just not sustainable, and it's not fair for the work that hardworking Albanians do. So I think that we give some guidelines, but we'll definitely need to have a collaborative approach where the states are sharing information about the true cost of living in their states. So that's appropriate, because I don't think the cost of living or the minimum wage in Alabama should be the same as California or New York.
One other thing, I became eligible as a Medicare provider in '99. Every time they redid the Medicare budget, people like me were considered auxiliary. So when physicians went up, we went down because that was the law. So at this point, when I retired a couple of years ago, I was collecting about half of what I'd been allowed in '99. Now, what that meant was that I had folks coming to me from Fort Payne, from Sylacauga, from Birmingham, or just this side of Birmingham, because I didn't want to drive through Birmingham. Let's see, Fort Payne, Sylacauga, Birmingham. Oh, yeah, I think I've covered them all. Anyway, the point being is I was it. That was the only provider of Medicare services as a psychologist in this range. And because we've been paid so poorly, so physicians go up. Now, physicians got capped when the Affordable Care Act and another Medicare law got passed a few years ago. But that needs to be addressed so that we can have providers, because we can't afford to provide the services.
Right.
That's the reason a lot of people, the guy that I regularly refer people to, he doesn't take Medicare. And he's an MSW and a licensed counselor. So it reimburses equally. And also Alabama is reimbursed for every procedure less than any other state in the country. And in this county, we're reimbursed less than they are in Jefferson County, because they say your cost of living is less. And I always say, explain that to Alabama Power, so they won't charge me as much.
Right, exactly.
But it doesn't change. It's a monopoly with Blue Cross and with Medicare, and we don't have any kind of power here. So anything you can do, if you get in the office, and I hope you do, to affect that, because that's the reason we're losing so many people to medical care, because we're losing people in medical care. They don't want to be the medical person because they're not going to get paid. They can make more money doing something else.
I read a story this morning in the Reflector about people on the border of Tennessee and Alabama, and even just crossing the border of Tennessee is dramatically better care. So we have a real opportunity here, and I will make sure we address that in our policy proposal. But I like that you mentioned when I'm elected. Even in this next year and a half, it's about using this opportunity to advocate and push for the right policies and move the discussion in the right direction. And I think that's an important role as candidates.
Angela?
I'm kind of bold, so I
please.
apologize to anyone in the room who's offended by my question. The Democratic Party has ignored Alabama. They don't think we can win anything, and so they don't invest in us. So my question is, how are you going to speak, or are you speaking to the DNC, and how will you help promote everybody else who may be running on a Democratic ticket?
Angela, I love that comment and question, and it is so salient. Ken Martin was in Selma. Let me step back just a little bit. Ken Martin was in Selma for the bridge crossing commemoration a couple months ago. And I had a great opportunity to speak to him, and he's a numbers guy too. He realizes that the population of America is moving to the south. It's moving away from the coast. And he sees the future 20, 30 years from now. If we don't invest in winning here and in places like Texas, we will never win federally at the presidential level again. So there is a sense of urgency there. Ken said he's going to come back and door knock with us. Now, it is a weird catch-22 that we're in, where you have to raise so much money to get their attention. Like, where does it start? But we kind of assume that frankly, we have to do it ourselves. We have to feed ourselves first. So we are fundraising nationally, and the strategy really is, how do we get control of our Senate again and protect our democracy? So surprisingly, we have gotten strong donations from Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon. Obviously, the focus is Alabama, but we're making this a national race. And if we can get the right amount of unique donors from the right amount of places, and obviously the absolute number, we can then start to attract some more attention from the DSCC.
A couple of comments more than questions. But I normally have lots of questions. It's really hard to be what I consider devastation is going on in Washington, and the fact that in 2 years, assuming that we do in fact, more representation, there's going to be lots to have to recover to get where we were. It's not great. So that's A, is there's just, I admire anybody who wants to run for office at this particular job. It's going to be a big job. The second is that I'm planning to move to France later this year. I have been shocked at some of, and I've been researching for almost a year now of preparing for my move. Once I set up residency there, after 3 months I can apply for their universal health care, which is amazing and costs virtually nothing. It's nothing like here, and I think the fact that this country hasn't so far and they never agreed to universal health care is a horrible thing. It is hard. This is something people don't have to sit around worrying about or going bankrupt over, or having a sick relative that can't afford the treatment. They don't have any of those worries. Housing over there is plentiful. Here we have a problem. Those are two things that once you get those things under control, I think it helps tremendously with people's, with their mindset. They feel more comfortable and care more about their community. But it's been amazing to me. Not that I don't love this country, but to see the comparison with the way they live over there and the things that they seem to place more importance over. It's just amazing. Another thing is that this state is very similar to the country in that their tax base is geared on getting from the poorest and giving to the richest. That's the way our country is figured, which is it's just so unfair. So those are just comments that I have to make.
I hear you. I think healthcare is a big, big issue, and I am reminded of a conversation, a comment that Nancy Pelosi made, that we are a capitalist society. So part of this campaign is about being pragmatic. How can we move the needle and move us in that right direction? And I think it's important to have that big vision, but will it happen next year or the year after? Probably not.
Yeah.
So how can we start moving people in the right direction, helping them, I think someone said a little bit earlier, think about the long-term strategy. If we get our healthcare costs under control, do people then feel more comfortable in their daily lives? It becomes less antagonistic, frankly. I think a lot of that is, it's kind of a state of fear and panic that people live in. And will we attract better businesses if we actually have a stable healthcare system? I don't know if I would move a business here if I know that we are in a maternity desert and my employees can't get the care they need. So it's so circular.
Yeah.
Also, a comment and a question related to that lovely M-word messaging. It seems to me that if there is such a thing, the typical NAGA voter routinely votes against their own self-interest, their own best interest when it comes to these bread and butter issues, health care, grocery shopping, housing, all of those things. And it seems to me also that we Democrats have done a fairly poor job of framing our messaging so that somehow we can bring a little light to these people to say, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to vote for this person on the national level or the state level because, oh wait, my grocery bill is going to go up or my housing costs are going to go up. How can we better frame our own messaging?
I love that question. And you made me think of something. If you go to my website, DakaraILarriett.com, there are two other words you won't see on there, Democrat or Republican. Now, I think you can tell from my ideals, the reason I'm here today, I'm clearly a Democrat. But what we really are talking about are the policy priorities that improve the lives of all Alabamians. And we're going to try that as long as we can, not getting sucked into partisan bickering and ideological battles, as long as we can. And I think it's pretty obvious I'm a Democrat, but you don't have to make people feel bad and think, oh, well, I can't vote for him because you're on this team. When we talk about healthcare, economic opportunity, and education, most people are like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that's what we're running with, and I appreciate the comment.
Okay, move on. Ladies, we're gonna let the party go.
Yeah, I got something.
Oh, please, please.
And
Of course you got a question.
yeah,
Is there a certain space?
yeah, that's good right there. I'm gonna record.
I'm going to take this off so it
Okay,
looks a little more
fine.
aesthetic. Okay, Nathan.
Alabama's prison system is one of the most barbaric in the world, and the DOJ is suing Alabama about its prison system right now. So, as a U.S. Senator, is there any reforms you can help bring to Alabama's bad prison system where inmates are getting killed and the guards are torturing the inmates?
Yes, so I am very aware of the deficiencies in our prison system. In fact, I spent yesterday with Alabama Appleseed in Birmingham talking about this very issue. About one inmate dies per day, and we spend millions, I believe the number was 57 million, in defending corrections officers. That's money that can go into healthcare, that can feed people, that can go into Medicaid expansion. So we had some comments a little bit earlier around how do we frame these issues. I frame them as, if it's not a matter of empathy, it's a matter of economics. If we can just think about how we take care of our people better. This campaign is about improving the lives of all people, including those inmates. We've got to think about how we have people in our system. They should not be dying. And one of the issues that I read quite a bit about was the housing of folks. We have first-time nonviolent offenders with very violent individuals who are serving life sentences. That's one of the first things we can do is separate these people so that these nonviolent first-time offenders are not dying when they are due to get out. That's kind of a flashpoint when someone's about to be released from prison. HB 202 has expanded qualified immunity not just for police, but also for corrections officers. I worry that this expansion is going to create even more issues and harsh conditions in our jails. So we've got to look at that very carefully at the results. It's passed now. Let's look at the results and see if it truly does back the blue or does it hurt Alabamians. And one last point on that is it makes you wonder, was it passed so that we don't have to keep defending these officers from doing bad things? So we've got to very carefully look at the results of this expansion and advocate for taking care of all Alabamians, including those inmates.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Under 3 minutes, great.
Thank you so much for having me.
3 minutes is the max for Blue Sky and Twitter and all that, so that's perfect. I'm going to upload the whole thing.
I wondered if you would